Hey, what's going on, everybody? Appreciate you for tuning in to the On the Ball podcast here on Integrity Sports Network. You already know what it is. If you are new to the channel and to the show, definitely appreciate you. Make sure you make your comments known, your opinions on the comments, and everything like that. We would love to hear from you. We have a lot to get into tonight, but before we get into that, got to bring the crew on so we can get the conversation going. So first, we got to bring in, you know, my boy Brett, guarded three. Here we go. There he
Fuck,
is. How you doing tonight, Brett?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Great day today. Let's talk some sports.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, we can't get started without, finishing out the crew. So also have Dylan in the building. What's going on, Dylan?
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, everybody?
Your video's like,
Oh,
Sideways.
I don't know why it turned now. My phone's normal.
it's all good.
That's weird. Why did it do that? It was normal literally before. Okay,
There you go.
I don't know why I had to
You got it.
readjust it. Maybe since we went live, I have to readjust it. But what's going on, everybody?
All right, nothing much. It's our first show on a new platform. We got Restream going, so hopefully it's still visually pleasing to you all. But like I was saying, we're going to talk about some NBA. We're actually like 3 weeks away from the season starting, which is kind of crazy. There was a trade that happened that I want to get these guys' thoughts on. We also have NFL that we normally talk about as well. So a lot to get into, and let's go ahead and get started with our first topic with the NBA. So, what was it, like last week or so? There was this rumored. I feel like this deal's been rumored about for a while, but now it's actually gonna happen. We got Karl Anthony Towns moving from Minnesota to New York to become the new Knick. In return, the Knicks are going to send out Randall, DiVincenzo, some picks. So, first question is going to be: looking at this trade, who won it? I feel like that's where everybody starts these conversations. Who won this trade? I'll start with you, Dylan.
It's hard to really say who won with a trade like this. I mean, Julius Randle and Karl Anthony Towns are both kind of pieces that kind of really didn't know what to make of them. Kind of didn't know where they fit, especially in the current teams that they were at. Kind of teams that were all kind of players that were also kind of trade rumored every year. Maybe not so much in comparison to some other players, but very high trade rumored every year. And kind of a shock that both of them got traded to the teams that they got traded to, or at least the trade that happened for them. I think just on paper, you might just say Minnesota. You would think, or not Minnesota, sorry, New York. Since they got Karl Anthony Towns, you would arguably say they got the better player. We don't know how in a long run how Randall and DiVincenzo is going to fit. Honestly, probably the best piece of this all was probably DiVincenzo, just because he will probably be able to be more of a plug and play type of player than maybe what you can expect out of Karl Anthony Towns, especially since he'll probably have that increased minutes, especially knowing what, New York does up there. And Randall kind of might struggle a little bit, especially not knowing what kind of his role will be in this place as well, with Anthony Edwards already being there, Gobert already kind of being a prominent big there. Kind of very interesting on both sides. You'd probably just say the Knicks for now because they got the better overall player on Karl Anthony Towns. But man, DiVincenzo could be like a key piece for them in the playoffs, and then be like, oh, well, they really won the trade with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gonna be interesting to see. I guess as it plays out, who ends up coming out on top. But I mean, Brett, how do you break this trade down? Who do you think wins out initially? Because obviously, once we see them on the court, we'll have a better idea.
I think short term it's going to be the Knicks.
Okay.
I think long term this probably is a better trade than for Minnesota than people will give them credit for. I know it's a lot of fun to just kind of bag on Julius Randle, and I think Karl Anthony Towns is a great fit in New York. He brings a great floor spacing presence, and with the injury to Mitchell Robinson, who we all knew you couldn't count on him to stay healthy anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a great addition to go out and get Karl Anthony Towns. So I think that was a great move. The $1 million question is Carl Anthony Towns and make them a title contender. I'm going to go with maybe. It's tough to say. It's really tough to judge with him
Mm-hmm.
because his floor spacing is great, but he does a lot of other little things. Just too many bad offensive fouls, too many like boneheaded mental lapses. Him and Tibbs were together before, and they were at each other's throats. So overall, it'll be interesting to see the New York side and what I think for the Timberwolves side. I think they knew that this Cat Gobert duo and everything. I think they knew this wasn't a long term path of success building around Anthony Edwards. This is a situation where you made the Western Conference Finals this year. Okay, next year you hope they do it again, but you're hoping you don't get regression from Mike Conley. You're really hoping that Cat and Gobert have another year where they really mesh. Like there's so many variables, and with the age of some of these pieces around them, you don't know if that's sustainable or not. And when you're going Julius Randle, who can opt out of his contract this year, so you're going to get financial flexibility with this Randle deal because at worst it's only a 2-year deal after this one, and you get the best contract in the league, arguably, in Dante DiVincenzo. And guess what? When the Randle deal's off the books, cool. Guess what? Now you have a lot more salary cap space to try to build around Anthony Edwards, Dillingham, if Sharp hits. So overall, I think for the long term health of the Timberwolves and their ability to compete, I think they did great. I think they're winners in that regard. Short term, the Knicks won the trade.
One thing I've also been seeing on it now that you mentioned that, just talking about contracts, it was like Carl Anthony Towns had a big cap hit. Anthony Edwards was going to have his soon, and then you're also paying Gobert his money. And it was just basically like, man, paying Carl Anthony Towns is really going to hurt you guys. And it was just at the point where, like Brett said, kind of having Randall on the books, having a little bit more flexibility, and then, maybe him not working out there, and then you have massive flexibility with already some great young players with Dillingham, Edwards, Gobert still being there for a little bit longer. You could definitely make something work.
And not to mention, I just think that Julius Randle brings something on the court that you didn't have with Carl Anthony Towns. Cat is a better spacer. However, there's a massive issue outside of outside of Mike Conley when it comes to playmaking and just passing the ball in general. Because once we go into looking at how good the passing is on this team, it's really not. Anthony Edwards isn't a good passer. Like he's an okay passer, but he's not great at it. Like your second best passer arguably was Kyle Anderson last year, and he's in Golden State now. I think what Julius Randle brings, yes, unpredictability is one thing, but he brings another playmaker in that can kind of take the load off of Mike Conley, somebody else who can kind of help distribute the ball and be a secondary playmaker off of Anthony Edwards. I think he can do that really well for them.
Yeah, I mean, like, listening to both of you like speak on this, like when I first saw the trade, I kind of looked at it as who got the best player. So I was like, I guess the Knicks win. But when you do take in the financial aspect of on Minnesota's side, yes, they're paying Gobert a lot, and the Gobert Cat dynamic because of their contracts and everything like that. I felt like them saving some money with Randall. I definitely see it from their point of view. And for the Knicks, like you said, Brett, Karl Anthony Towns can shoot from the perimeter. I feel like at times that was kind of an Achilles heel for the Knicks, where they have guys who can get to the rim, they have guys who crash the boards, but in terms of stretching the floor and being like legitimate threats from the perimeter, at least Towns helps there. He can be inconsistent, but so I'm gonna go with the Knicks win the trade initially, but I do think the loss of DiVincenzo for the Knicks could be something paired with the loss of Hartenstein. I think Knicks fans might overlook right now, but they'll come to really miss him, during um, certain matchups against certain teams in the East. I was going on Jory. I thought it was a late April Fool's prank. In all honesty, I can see that because it did kind of come out of nowhere. Like it was just a random night, and then it was like, oh, reported trade between Knicks and Timberwolves is like finalizing, and I was just like, where did this come from? But
Yeah, it was kind of shocking. I heard like rumors about it, and I thought it was
yeah,
like one of those rumors that were just like rumors that never actually like happened. And then it was like, no, actually, like this trade is like a done deal. Like it went through, and it's like, oh, okay. It was just kind of like weird to think about it. You just didn't expect it to happen, and when it did, it's just like, okay, okay, we just kind of have to accept it now.
yeah,
It just didn't feel
all right,
like that's kind of the crazy thing. It didn't even feel blockbuster. It just kind of felt weird. It was like, oh, this is not what I expected to happen this season, especially given,
mhm,
New York even doing their trade for Mikal Bridges. It's like it kind of felt like that's where New York was done for, their offseason. That was like their big move. It was like, no, we still plan on moving Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. And maybe I kind of had little inklings that something big might would have happened because, after Bridges was signed, DiVincenzo was like, yeah, it's nice to be back with all those people, but, I'm kind of worried about the role I have. And that was a little bit understandable, but this is not the trade I expected.
right. So I guess kicking it back to you all, what do you think is the maybe biggest con to this move for each of the teams? Like, what do you think might be the biggest variable that could turn this into a failure for both the Wolves and the Knicks?
Probably just chemistry would be my big thing. You're kind of throwing a little different dynamic because if you look at New York, DiVincenzo was one of the Nova boys. It seemed like they like at least on the players aspect, they always had a lot of immense love for Randall, or at least respect for them. And then throwing Carl Anthony Towns, which I imagine he'll get along with the culture and stuff just well. He's just a little bit of a different player. I mean, we've seen players of the past kind of mention how he is to work with a little bit. And then on the Minnesota side, kind of a little bit of the same. When you add someone like Randall or DiVincenzo, I'm not sure if it's going to increase or decrease the locker room aspect for them at least. Um, but overall, it's just different faces in the locker room having to mesh well, change your like offensive and defensive perspectives, kind of working around these guys. Everyone's going to have to adjust. So these teams are going to have to adjust. So I wouldn't be surprised if both these teams weren't super great at the start of the season.
Okay.
I think with the Knicks, I think I agree with chemistry, and I think the real relationship between Cat and Tibbs, because Tibbs is a guy that wants to play heavy minutes and will get frustrated if you're not giving your all or trying your best. And we've seen plenty of times with Cat in Minnesota. If his shot isn't falling, his head is down. He gets really bad body language. Not to mention, he's went through a playoff series. I can't remember exactly which one, but had 9 offensive fouls in 6 games. So that's kind of a concern of mine is will him and Tibbs really get along if one Tibbs just has to sit there and watch him commit all these bad turnovers, stupid fouls, and just give off bad body language in general? So I'm curious on to see if I know they said nice things and said they patched it up, but we'll see. We'll see. So just chemistry all around. Timberwolves, to me, this is actually really simple. It's really what they do with the cap space, and that's my concern about this entire trade. You cleared up cap space, great. Now go convince a superstar coming to come to Minnesota is the whole other problem. That's like I'm like, cool, you got all this money. So who's coming? Like I'm sure you can get some really good role players to come to Minnesota, but there's
Mhm.
not many even star level players that are going to be like, it sounds great. 5-year max in Minnesota when I can get the same 5-year max anywhere else for a better location. It's not as cold when I'm trying to play. So overall, I think the issue with the Wolves will be more long term. You got this cap space. Now, can you actually convince the big fishes to come swimming up to Minnesota?
Man, but you just have that one good bargaining chip, Anthony Edwards. That's just a nice bargaining chip to have, though. Just being like, man, look who's on this team, though. Maybe you couldn't get like an upper echelon superstar like a number one, but there's a lot of number twos who would probably like to go play with Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, but we've also seen guys like LeBron struggle to get some big name free agents to Cleveland.
True, true.
Hmm.
Giannis struggling to get big name free agents to Milwaukee that we didn't trade for. So I agree. Anthony Edwards is a phenomenal chip, and some players should be dying to play with them. But will it actually happen? That's
Okay.
$1 million question.
I think it's a valid question because if you're going to save the money, fans are going to want to know what does that look like. Because yes, you brought in Randall and DiVincenzo, but Cat has been part of that team for years, and I don't know. I don't know how Timberwolves fans feel about Randall. I mean, I'm not the biggest Randall fan, but he does serve a purpose on the floor. I kind of my biggest potential issues kind of along the lines of Jory's thinking here in terms of the chemistry. But if there's a lineup where you have Gobert, Randall, McDaniels on the floor together, what does that look like offensively? And let's just say you have Conley and Ant Man on the floor as well. For Ant Man, his greatest skill is his ability to get to the rim. I mean, it's going to be one thing you're driving to the rim, Gobert's in your way. And then you go to the other side, now Randall's in your way. Or McDaniels is in your way. Like, that's why we need to see how Minnesota makes these pieces fit together. Because Ant could become probably frustrated at times with some of these lineups that could potentially be on the floor with him. That's my only thing for Minnesota. What does that look like with Ant Man? And does that take away from him? Does it force him on the perimeter a lot more? Which I think limits kind of the great player that he is. I mean, am I crazy to think that?
No,
No.
Minnesota with that lineup is pretty much saying, listen, you think you're good? All right, go succeed with our spacing that we had for Garnett in '04. It's
Yeah.
not great. I think what this does too is now I think the most important non-ant player on the Minnesota Timberwolves just might be Mike Conley now, being the shooter as he is, and now at this point, outside of the real only playmaker that sets up other people outside of when Julius Randle gets downhill and kicks. But overall, Mike Conley's value to the Minnesota Timberwolves just went up like tenfold. They better hope that man does not regress. Otherwise, it's going to be a really long season for him.
Yeah. I mean, we will see. We'll see if there's more moves because, I mean, like we talked about, Minnesota now has some cap relief that they have some time to go out there and see if they can pry somebody away. You know, maybe somebody's a little disgruntled in their own situation, try to get them to Minnesota. I would think because of our concerns about floor spacing, probably somebody who can stretch the floor, but we'll see what they choose to do with it. And as I also said in the beginning, we're about, I guess, 3 weeks from the start of the NBA season. Crazy to think we're that close already. So definitely expect us to talk a lot more NBA on here. I think we can
I
go
mean,
ahead and move on.
to be
Unless you
fair,
guys got
sorry,
one
one
more
more
thing you
thing.
want to add to it.
I was just looking at the NBA free agency pool just because we were talking about who could they may potentially go after. So Gobert is on a player option next year, and we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about Julius Randle. He is also on an option next year. So potentially, not saying that both would opt out. I'd imagine Rudy Gobert is a $46 million player option. He's definitely opting into that, and Randle has a $30 million player option. He'll most likely opt in, but you could kind of see him maybe wavering that. But that's $70 million in cap right there,
I
just
think
with those two players alone.
I think what'll end up happening is, yeah, the Knicks finally did get rid of Randall. I think what'll end up happening is Randall probably opts out. I think Randall will look for less money per year, but maybe a longer term contract for more stability. This is a guy coming off a shoulder injury. So I think he might be looking for that long term stability over that 1 year payday. Gobert, I also think he just gets re signed. He's also just become invaluable to what they do. Yes, they have Nas Reed, but
Mhm.
Nas Reed is not a great rim protector, and
Mm-mm.
they need Gobert. So I think they both end up. I could see them very well both end up coming back at the end of the year, just at reduced rates from that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Minnesota are giving themselves, I guess, a sense of flexibility. But look, we've seen teams have flexibility and use it in the poorest way and just set themselves back. Now, Minnesota, I guess you could say Minnesota and the Knicks are kind of teams on the rise in both the West and the East. I know for a lot of Knicks fans, they think this moves them up to like cementing themselves as number two. Minnesota, I don't really feel like I've heard a lot of people talking about from their end, like where they fit in a Western Conference that I feel like last season was kind of unpredictable, and this year seems like it's just going to be another year where you're not really sure what you're going to get from a lot of teams in the West.
Yeah, basically to piggyback off that, it's like, sorry, but one's going to probably most likely be the Celtics, given the right that they just won the championship, had a very impressive year. And then it's like 2 through 4 is very hazy. Like 2, 3, and 4, it's just like you don't really know who you can put at those spots because we've seen
Mm-hmm.
work from Orlando, we've seen Cleveland do their thing here and there. We can't forget about Milwaukee. Can't forget about, what we're going to see out of New York this year. So it's very much a tough position to fill out who you're going to fill out that 2 through 4 spot. And
I,
even don't forget about Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I actually think number two is pretty. I think the top two teams for me this year are going to be easy. Number one,
Really?
Celtics. Number two, Oklahoma City Thunder.
Oh, I meant for the Eastern Conference.
Oh, Eastern Conference. My bad. I thought you just meant through the
No,
entire.
no, 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 no.
Okay, yeah. It'll probably be the Knicks.
Okay. We'll see. I mean, I feel like a couple of weeks down the line, right before the season, we'll definitely give you our predictions on the season. So I guess we don't want to spoil our necessarily standings right now, but we'll see if there's going to be some answers to
Go
these moves
Hawks.
from certain teams. Because I mean, the Knicks did the Mikal Bridges. It seemed like the Sixers went Paul George. So now you got the Knicks getting Karl Anthony Towns. Who makes the next move?
Man,
We'll
it's
see.
crazy. It feels like that Paul George move was forever ago, too. Like, I
It
honestly
really
forgot Paul
does.
George. Like, I honestly completely forgot Paul George was on the Sixers.
Yeah. All right. So I feel like we can now move on to the NFL, where we just finished up week 4. So
Don't tell me about
we
it.
we always kind of get started with our NFL talk with some observations. So I guess we'll start with you, Dylan. What was maybe your major observation? Pick coming off of the week 4 in the NFL.
Scrolling over some of these scores real quick, seeing where I want to go. Uh, Man, Minnesota's good. I'm sorry. I guess that's like my maybe kind of an overreaction at this point. But I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
Sam Darnold's good himself, but the offense that they run in Minnesota is so scheme good, and what the defense Brian Flores runs just gives
Yeah.
so many people trouble. And trust me, I'm giving Green Bay every benefit of the doubt. They were fighting tooth and nail in that game. They made that game a lot closer. Like that game was a lot different than what the score showed. It was like a halftime score that was way different, and Green Bay just came back and fought for it. And that's kind of like the vibe I've all got gotten a little bit out of Minnesota is they kind of like ease off the pressure a little bit, or maybe teams start to figure them out more in the second half. And that's very much what I got for at least Jordan Love on the Packers side. It felt like that second half they're starting to figure out Flores' scheme a little bit, starting to make things work a little bit, and it was just they were just down so much in that first half they just didn't have enough time to work with. But man, this Minnesota team's good. They're going to give a lot of teams struggle, and Sam Darnold might be that quarterback. He doesn't need to be perfect, but man, he can take them to a playoff spot. How far can he take them? Not too sure. We'll get there when that comes. But he can make this Minnesota team a team that could maybe win that conference. I still love Green Bay's chances, Detroit played a great game on Monday, beating my Seahawks. But man, that Minnesota team is looking a little scarier and scarier each week. They have 3 good wins now, being Green Bay, San Francisco, and Houston. And those are 3 nice wins to have on your resume.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good place to start there. Brett, what was your biggest observation from this past week?
My biggest observation, well, I think one of it has to be Mike McDaniels just might be overrated as a head coach. Listen, I get it. You schemed this entire scheme around Tua,
Mm-hmm.
but you shouldn't have a scheme in a system where the starting quarterback goes down. Every other person is just completely lost. Like Skylar Thompson, I get he's not great, but he's been in the system for like what 3 years now, and he still doesn't seem like he picked it up at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to count our Pro Bowler out, Snoop Huntley. He was only there for like 7 days, but a
He was
good
their leading rusher and passer. I'm just saying, you can't have Tyler Huntley, who just came off your practice squad, being your leading rusher in that game. That cannot be a possible thing.
no, exactly, and a good coach will adjust the system to fit the strengths of the quarterback. But McDaniels wants the quarterback to adjust to the system and fit the system, which, guess what? It doesn't work like that. We saw Matt LaFleur take Malik Willis and make him look really good for 2 weeks. We've seen guys like Kyle Shanahan tweak and adjust his system to make other quarterbacks look good, a my rate of quarterbacks. Mike McDaniels, he just doesn't do that. It's his way or the highway. And when somebody else has to try to run his system, it doesn't look great. And they call the most conservative and bland game plan of all time. And that man is allergic to inside runs. The whole night for them was a disaster. And I think that's just all falls back to Mike McDaniels.
I'm glad the Titans got a win, but you know who I feel bad for this whole game? All of the weapons in this game that just got underutilized outside of Tony Pollard. Just like you have Tyreek Hill, Devin A. Shane, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyjae Spears. You have some of these great weapons, and it was like none of those guys really did any good outside of Tony Pollard. And I guess Tyjae Spears did have that
Yeah, Spears
touchdown.
had a pretty good game too. Yeah.
Yeah, he had that one touchdown. But outside of that, it was just like, man, it's just injuries suck. DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devin A. Shane. Not great games for any of them.
I mean, it's kind of crazy though that without a big game from Hopkins or Ridley, like you mentioned, they still put up 30 on the Dolphins, which I mean that's kind of condemns the Dolphins even more. Like you couldn't figure out what Tennessee was doing or stop it, and then offensively, I mean the amount of times like Tyreek Hill lined up illegally, or the illegal shift penalties, the amount of times they kept trying like that swing pass to the guy out of the backfield that was just off. Like, yeah, I agree that Miami did not have a good night whatsoever. And for Mike McDaniel, who's supposed to be an offensive genius, not a good showing on Monday night. Everybody watching, that was the game plan. So I definitely see where you're coming from with that.
To be fair,
Yeah,
one thing I'll give Tennessee credit for, they were just able to get into the red zone. They had 5 field goals and a safety. They had 2 touchdowns on the night. But just at least getting to the point where they were able to score points is something Miami wasn't able to do.
Yeah, the Dolphins could have stopped them. Here's some Mason Rudolph-led Titans. And yeah, I bet you.
And it worked.
It did.
How much I bet people still try to fake themselves into thinking the Dolphins are some kind of contender later in the year, too. They're going to go on a nice little 4-game run, like, oh, these guys are contenders now. No, they're not.
Yeah, they're going to be like 3 teams under 500, too. And just like one of the teams is going to be like the well, I'm not sure what team, but I'll be like a Texans-esque team. Like a team who's maybe like a contender, but we're not sure yet. And some people are overhyped on them. So everyone's going to be like, oh, the Dolphins are back, baby.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say my biggest observation, those Jets, man. A lot of people wanted to buy into the Jets. after they beat the Patriots on Thursday night, they they let Bo Nix and the Broncos go in there and beat them 10-9. So the Jets defense did their job, but that great bad man Aaron Rodgers couldn't find a way to decipher the Broncos defense and get them into the end zone. Which once again, Bo Nix led a touchdown drive. Aaron Rodgers couldn't. That's the most 2024 NFL season thing that you can probably just put out there.
I'll word it like this: Bo Nix had a touchdown drive and only 60 passing yards on the entire game,
Yeah,
and Aaron Rodgers had 225 and not a one.
it's another box score that doesn't make any sense when you look at it. But Denver's going to take that win. They're not going to give it back. And the Broncos are now 2-2, as well as the Jets are.
It's one of those things that it doesn't seem like Rodgers and any of these receivers are on the same page at all half the time. I know Matt Ryan was talking about it after the game, and you could really see it on that play. You know, the one where they show Aaron Rodgers' face and he looks mad. He's looking at Garrett Wilson. Well, it looks like they were trying to run like a dig concept and have Garrett Wilson go over the top and take out the two safeties and have Lazard run underneath for an easy completion. But Rodgers instead threw it at Wilson. He wasn't expecting it. He thought he was supposed to just take out the safeties, and overall that just seemed like very showing of the Jets' problems. It's just they're not on the same page. This feels like it could be a really dangerous football team, but they just got to figure out, okay, what are we doing? Let's just get on the same page and go from there.
Also, there is no way whatsoever Brees Hall should have 10 attempts for 4 yards. What is that? I'm sorry. Denver has been playing great defense. Now, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They're 2-2. They've been playing great defense. That's the reason they're 2-2, as they've been playing teams with strong defense. Their offense has just kind of been making it work, scoring points as they go. But their defense is the reason that they've been keeping it close with most teams. I mean, they played Seattle in week 1 very close. But man, there's just no way Brees Hall should have 10 attempts for 4 yards. That's just kind of absurd. How does Aaron Rodgers outrush you in a game with half the attempts? You're a running back?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he almost outrushed Braylon Allen.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of been one of the concerns I've had with the Jets, is that when you bring in a guy like Aaron Rodgers, he likes to run things a certain way. And my fear was a talented back like Brees Hall would kind of fade into the background and get lost in all of this. Now, I mean, maybe it was just a situation against Denver. That was their game plan. But I think that's something to watch going forward. If they're going to try to be one-dimensional with this version of Aaron Rodgers at 40 years old, I don't think that's going to be their best bet if they're going to try to make a playoff, get a playoff berth. And more importantly, to Jets fans, they're supposed to be Super Bowl contenders with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that works if defenses are just going to scheme to stop the passing game, which at times Aaron Rodgers makes some good throws, but he's had several instances this season where something looks off, like you said, Brett. He's a little late on a slant or something like that. And maybe that's something that gets better as they play more games and all that kind of stuff, but it's just you can't give up games like this against the Broncos and think you're going to be a Super Bowl contender when you get to January and February and you're facing top-notch AFC teams. Not saying I feel sorry as a Patriots fan. I love seeing the Jets struggle. That's what I root for every year. It's like Eagles fans with the Cowboys. That's my
it's me with the 49ers.
Yeah.
Who's your kryptonite, Brett, as a Packers fan? Is it Bears? You just like seeing the Bears struggle? Or is it the Vikings, Lions?
Is
there?
Brett frozen?
I think he's froze. Okay, we'll go with that.
I thought he was like a deep thought. I was just like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, no, so did I too. I didn't see him move for a second.
Let's see.
Oh. But yeah, to agree, yeah, that's me with the 49ers.
Yeah. So I guess as Brett tries to figure it out, I guess we'll go back around and yeah. Do you have like a maybe sneaky under the radar observation from this past week? Maybe one that nobody's like really paying attention to.
Looking at the scores. Man, the
Oh,
Falcons.
welcome back, Brett.
Well, maybe not the Falcons. I don't like the Falcons. Oh man, sneaky observations, man. Maybe I'll give myself a little bit of credit for that Ravens pick. I thought maybe they just had some momentum. They're figuring out some of that offensive scheme, and Derrick Henry had himself a night, almost 200 rushing yards. He had 199. I don't care. I'm not QB kneeling. He's getting 200. Do a dive. But regardless of that point, I picked Baltimore. I was the only one who picked Baltimore, and I was pretty heavy on them in that game. And they just went out and they shined. Don't like that Justice Hill's your leading receiver, especially at that running back range. But overall, man, they were just making it work on offense. I thought the Bills were going to be too cocky. That's kind of the Bills' mantra. Every season when we overhype them, they lose the games that we, kind of overhyped them on. Like they'll be 3-0 in a dominant fashion, a 5-game win streak in a dominant fashion. Team they should probably win, or a team that's going to be a tough competition that we'll give them credit for, they lose. And that's kind of what I expected with this Buffalo team. Nothing really surprising yet. They struggled against a good defensive matchup. Josh Allen didn't play super great. No turnovers, which you like to see, but overall, just Baltimore just beat the crap out of them that game.
Yeah. So Jory did mention Mike McDaniel's overrated. Brett, that was Brett's first observation. All right, so well, Brett, I guess while you were gone, because Dylan was asking, because I was saying like, for me as a Patriots fan, love seeing the Jets do poorly. Dylan said, as a Seahawks fan, love seeing the Niners. I mean, Jory in the chat as a Titans fan, love to see the Jags struggle. So for Packers fans, is it the Lions, the Vikings, the Bears? Like, who's the team that you absolutely want them to flame out and just implode?
Right now it'd probably be the Vikings.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I know the right answer for most fans would be the Bears, but they flame out and fall apart on their own. I don't normally need to pray and wish upon that. Yearly occurrence.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was about to say, it seemed like the Packers normally ran that conference for a while, so it was like whoever gives them competition.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think the Lions are going anywhere, so I'm not even going to do that. But the Vikings, they're like prime contenders to have the wheels come off the wagon there.
Okay. So I mean, high second the Ravens. Yes, love that one from you, Jory. So yeah, we're going around second round of observations. Except for this one, I wanted like a sneaky kind of under the radar observation from this past week. Do you have one?
Jaden Reed is him. Jaden Reed was absolutely phenomenal against the Vikings. There are many reasons why we lost, but he definitely wasn't one of them. Yeah. I believe, if I remember correctly, he was 7 catches on 8 targets for like 130 yards. He was an absolute madman. And I think my non-Packers one would probably be Anthony Richardson. May have lost his job for the year if the Colts keep playing like that under Joe Flacco. I know Anthony Richardson is the future, but if they keep winning games and the offense all of a sudden starts clicking like they did on Sunday, Richardson might have to wait another year to play more snaps.
I agree with that a little bit. And it's the main factor of, like, look how Michael Pittman shined that game. He was getting nothing from Richardson. And it was the first game with Joe Flacco, 6 receptions, 113 yards. And they're paying that man a pretty hefty price. I think they might just stick with that. It's like we're paying some of these weapons good money. Maybe let Joe Flacco work it out before we have to pay Richardson that big money.
Yeah, I mean, look for Flacco, he's having a really good end of his career. He
Mm-hmm.
plays with the Ravens and with the Jets. He's sitting on his couch. He goes to the Browns last year, leads them to the playoffs. He's kind of hanging around, gets to the Colts, and now, I mean, maybe this weekend might look at somewhat saving their season. I mean, I'm not going to go overboard, but looking at him and Richardson, like Flacco obviously gives them the best chance to win. I guess it's going to be whether or not the coaching staff wants to make that decision or throw Richardson back out there and hope he kind of just clicks and gets it. I feel like Ursay's probably going to be like play Flacco because Ursay probably just wants wins. But Richardson, you kind of have to understand who he is. Like what he's great with the deep ball. He's got to work on the other stuff, the intermediate routes, the short passing game. It's like that if he can figure that out, and maybe if he watches Flacco for a game or two, Flacco gives him some pointers or something, he just works on it a little bit more. Maybe he'll be better off. But for right now, I don't see a reason to really play him.
Like the first two throws of that game, like showed the duality of Anthony Richardson so perfectly. Because the first one he puts like a 30-yard rope right over a defender. It was a really amazing throw. And then the next play, he just needs to hit like a 5-yard out, and it was wide open. Should have been a really easy throw for him, and he just completely sends that thing like almost into the first row. Like,
Yeah,
more consistency on those short to intermediate throws from Anthony Richardson. He's a top quarterback in the league, but will that happen? Only time will tell.
right.
Man, it's hard. It's hard to tell with this Flacco thing too. It's like just the duality between Anthony Richardson from Joe Flacco game planning wise. It's like, man, imagining planning a whole week for Anthony Richardson. It's like, here's Joe Flacco now. Like,
Yeah,
prepare for this. It's like, yeah, I imagine he did piece him up. Yeah, I could see that a little bit just because, I mean, Anthony Richardson, not Anthony Richardson, but Joe Flacco is so just like calculated in time, whereas Anthony Richardson, you just have to watch for these big plays that they'll do because if it gets an opening, he's going to burn you on it. But there's not going to be so many openings throughout the gameplay because he can't do some of these little things where he can kind of set up some of these big openings. That's where Joe Flacco, man, he's just going to play football. He's just going to find whoever's open. He's going to find just what's there. He's going to find his first option. If his first option's not there, he's going to find his second option. As where Anthony Richardson's like, Alec Pierce is down there somewhere. Let me just throw it 50 yards.
right. Richardson will get to the end of his drop and he'll hold it because he wants the deep ball. Flacco,
Very much
5-step drop.
my
He gets that fifth step. That ball's coming out.
my ideal with him is like Anthony Richardson will go for that home run, that 50 ball, where like Joe Flacco, he doesn't mind taking 5 or 6 plays, getting 50 yards. Is where like Anthony Richardson's like, let's get it in one scoop, like one play. As where Joe Flacco was like, I'm comfortable taking 5 plays, getting that 50.
I always feel bad for Joe Flacco because this guy keeps coming back to teams like, yeah, back up. I'm going to get this easy check. The easy check. Oh, yeah, by the way, our quarterback's hurt. Oh, but I got to work for a living now. Come on. I love how he looks every time. But he always seems like, yeah, I just kind of want to hang out, get this bag, and then the poor guy is forced into action just every year.
But like it seems like he loves that. He seems like he loves it. It's not like he's looking for it, but he was like, "You guys are relying on me." He's like, okay." Like, I'll go out there and throw a good game for you. I'll go out there and win the game for you guys.
Right. All right. Well, I will say my under the radar observation. I think the Commanders might be the most fun team to watch. I whenever I catch them, I love what Jaden Daniels is doing. He uses his arm, he uses his legs. You got Brian Robinson playing well. Terry McLaurin has found a spot in this offense. First couple of weeks, it seemed like that connection wasn't there. It seems like from last week and this week, he's becoming more part of the offense, and we know Terry McLaurin is a really good wide receiver in this league. Dan Quinn, is looking much better than I thought he would on the sidelines in Washington. So I'm excited to see how they play this out, if they can keep this level of play up, because in that division, they're clearly the best team right now. I mean, the Giants aren't a good team. The Cowboys have their own issues, and the Eagles. Look, if you want to know how the Eagles are doing, look up somebody in the Philly area, and they'll let you know. Like, Philly fans are just dumbfounded by what's going on in Philly with the Eagles team. So I think the Commanders can like somehow fly under the radar all season, and they might steal a playoff spot from somebody. No, I'm just saying that based off the first 4 weeks, they just look like that kind of team. We got to see, as more tape is out there on Jaden Daniels. Defenses will make adjustments, and what does that look like as the season goes on? What's going on, Anthony? Anthony said Washington needs to better up that defense. I mean, that was the an issue against Cincinnati, but they did well against Arizona.
I'm sorry. Remember when we used to talk about Washington as being as that like this dominant defensive team, just having all these just crazy defensive pieces and just being super good, and it's like now they're an offensive team. Well, they traded everybody last year because they weren't a good defensive team.
Yeah,
I'll say it is. I love this Washington team, and I think this is also benefiting another guy so much in Cliff Kingsbury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of people looked at as possibly damaged goods coming from Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're seeing is the full bag of the Cliff Kingsbury offense, and I don't think he necessarily could have done that with Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray is a great quarterback, but Kyler Murray also struggles to see and throw to the middle of the field. Even just having a prototypical bigger quarterback, I think just with the size of why am I blanking on his name?
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels, yeah. Brain fart. But with just his size and everything, I think that just opens up a lot more in his arm strength as well. So I really think that Cliff Kingsbury is having a resurgence, and I think that overall Jaden Daniels is just a better fit for what a Cliff Kingsbury offense wants to do than Kyler Murray was.
Yeah, I think that's you can kind of see that in the way that the two of them play. Kyler Murray likes to scramble around a lot. I mean, Jaden Daniels does scramble as well, but that's not his first inclination. Like, he's looking to make plays down the field, and then when all else fails, he'll then take off. But all right, so let's keep on with the NFL conversation, because I do want to talk about this guy right here, Davante Adams. So now apparently he's on the trade block. So obviously everybody's going to try to figure out where he should go. Is he legitimately on the trade block? How's this going to play out? So first question is going to be, do you think the Raiders move him? And the second part is going to be, where would you like to see him end up?
Yes, he does get moved. I'm sorry. The kind of that Anthony Pierce stuff coming out of him, like liking a post saying that like Davante Adams has played his last snap, and then all the kind of news coming out today that he wants a trade, and the Raiders are kind of are like engaged to move him, and they have a certain price. Yeah, man's getting moved. Like, it feels like it's kind of like when all that stuff comes out, like it's not like in an off-season situation where you can work out a contract, and that's kind of most of the reasons why this stuff doesn't work out. This is the middle of the season. We're not even at the trade block yet, and all this stuff's coming out. We're like, what, week 4, week 5?
Yep.
That's happening. He's getting moved. To where? Man, the Jets probably just seem cool, but it doesn't seem like Aaron Rodgers can find even Garrett Wilson, who is a great receiver in his own right. So I'm not sure if adding Davante Adams makes it better. But it seems like Rodgers only likes throwing to people Rodgers can only throw to, hence Allen Lazard feeling like he's been their best receiver this year. So maybe it might actually work out for New York fans. So maybe the Jets work. And I keep seeing people mention Kansas City, and if the Raiders trade Devontae Adams to Kansas City, that's the stupidest move they could do. Because I'm sorry, no matter what, if my team's bad, I'm never trading a good player to my rivals. It's not happening. That's not how I work. Just not. Might trade him in the same conference, not the rivals.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I feel like he gets traded to where, who knows? I see the Steelers are really looking for him. That's an interesting piece as well too, but where, I don't know.
All right. Brett, you have a prediction on where Devonte Adams ends up,
Yeah, and
or where you would fantasy world where you would put him if like that's the best fit for him.
yeah. First, Anthony, I don't know how I brain farted in his name either. By the way, I obviously the first name that the team that came to mind was the Jets. Obviously, him and Rodgers have a repertoire, and once again, it's been stated like Dylan just said. Aaron Rodgers likes to throw to guys that he can trust. The issue is sometimes he only throws to guys that he can trust. So my concern with that, he gets Devontae, and everybody else very well just might fall to the wayside, and we're going back to Aaron and Devontae, which is a great duo, but that's also just Devontae getting 12, 15 targets a game, and everybody else just really isn't eating. That could lead to an upset receiver room.
I'm
But
sorry, Lazard gets 8.
yeah, who needs Garrett Wilson, right? I agree. I actually think that probably does feel like a very reasonable spot for him to go. And I think that's something that the Jets will pursue. So I'll be the basic dude. I'll predict that he goes to the Jets. Rodgers Devontae reunion.
All right. I'm gonna predict. I feel like you have the right division. I'm going somewhere else. Buffalo. I feel like if you're the Bills, I know you drafted Keon Coleman, whatever, but basically Shakir is your like number one receiver. And not that he's like a terrible receiver because it seems like he and Josh Allen play well off of each other, but I feel like you bring in Devontae Adams and Shakir now becomes your two, or Coleman's your two and Shakir's your three. I feel like that's a better wide receiver group. I feel like Josh Allen would love to have a Devontae Adams. I don't know. It might force him into some of those arm punts a little bit because Devontae Adams can get down the field, but I just think Adams would be a guy that Josh Allen, and I can't believe I'm trying to fix Buffalo here or help them out as a Patriots fan, but when I heard he was on the block, that's kind of where my mind went. I feel like that's what the Bills should do is try to get some wide receiver in that room, and that's where I see him going. Anthony says sleeper team, his Washington Commanders. I wouldn't hate it. You told me Adams and McLaurin are running routes for Jaden Daniels. I'd be here for it. Okay, let's go on to the next story.
Let's say Devontae Adams to the Ravens.
Yeah, if he wants to waste 10, 12 weeks, knock himself out. He better get used to just blocking. I feel like Ravens fans are probably like cheering for this, but no, I'm not going to do that to Devontae Adams. So looking at the NFL, we're down to 2 undefeated teams, 1 winless team. Hold on. Jory chimes in with Devontae's not a diva unlike somebody else we know. Yeah, you don't really hear much from Devontae Adams. It is a big name receiver. That is a rarity. Yeah, so look at the unbeatens and the winless teams. 2 unbeaten, 1 winless. First question is, what do we see? Hold on, let's see how to phrase this. So between the winless and the unbeaten, will we have unbeaten team later in the season, or will the Jags still be winless? Which one happens first? The Jags get their first win, or both undefeated teams lose a game. And I put up their next 5 weeks to kind of give you some help. For the Jags, they have to go. They have the Colts this week. They go to the Bears next week. They got the Packers in London. I mean, the Patriots in London. Then the Packers in Jacksonville, and then travel to the Eagles. The Vikings have the Jets this week. Then their bye week. Then the Lions. They go out to LA for the Rams, and then the Colts. The Chiefs have the Saints this week, their bye week. Then they have to go to the 49ers and to the Raiders, then home for the Bucks. So who keeps this standing the longest?
So if I had to guess who keeps standing the longest, Kansas City. I have Kansas City winning this week. To be fair, I also on my personal end had Jacksonville winning this week and then the Vikings losing this week. So maybe that might be me personally. The NFL is a week of uncertainty, and at every week, a team you think who might lose will win, and a team who you think might win will lose. And this just feels like a week, in London, a big game for Aaron Rodgers. Sam Darnold might struggle with, kind of what Robert Saleh might throw with the Jets defense. I had the Jets winning this one actually over the Vikings. I had the Colts losing to the Vikings. Oh, not the Vikings, the Jaguars. Just because the Jaguars played a really strong game against a good Texans team last week. Colts kind of been struggling in their own right. I'm not sure who's starting this week for the Colts either. Not sure if it's been said if it's Richardson or Flacco yet. And I just think the Jaguars had played a really strong game last week, kind of getting on their flow a little bit. We'll have a game against the Bears next week, and the Patriots could create a little 3-run stretch, become 3-4, maybe be talked about a little bit again. That might do some things for them. But if I had to take one pick who's making it the longest, Kansas City. I feel like they're going to beat the Saints this week. No issue.
Okay.
But I could be wrong because it's the NFL.
Hey, what's going on, Mo?
You know what? I agree with that. I think the Vikings lose this week to the Jets. I think the Jaguars lose this week to the Joe Flacco-led Colts, but they beat Caleb Williams' Bears next week. That also just would be the Bears hater in me, but and I think that the Chiefs will end up losing to the 49ers. So I think wins and losses are all coming in the next couple weeks here, and I think it'll go Vikings lose, Jags win, and then the Chiefs will lose in like 3 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I've been saying for the longest time Kansas City wasn't losing till after their bye. Like it seems like that bye is the week you come stronger, and Kansas City would be that team who's so strong they would lose after their bye, just no matter what, just for some weird reason. Because it's the NFL, and everything we think happens doesn't.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of agree with you. I think the Chiefs probably lose to the Niners out in San Francisco. I actually think the Vikings beat the Jets. I think Brian Flores will have a game plan that's going to frustrate Aaron Rodgers in that offense that already has been wildly inconsistent. And I mean, for the Vikings, that Lions game after the bye, I think will be probably their first chance at a loss. For the Jags, if Joe Flacco starts, I'd take the Colts over them, and I agree that probably they might beat the Bears. If it's Anthony Richardson, even though he has a hip problem, I might take the Jags this weekend. So I think it's gonna be interesting, but yeah, I guess the Jags probably win first. No, because I have Kansas City. Well, yeah, because Kansas City I think will beat the Saints, lose to the Niners. I'll just say maybe the Vikings lose to the Lions, and then kind of like what you guys are saying, the Chiefs and Vikings will lose after the Jags win. I think I phrased that correctly. I don't know. It's kind of jumbling in my head as I'm.
No, that's right. You have the Chiefs and Vikings losing to the 49ers, and you don't think the Jags will win at least till the Bears at minimum.
Yes. Flacco's an upgrade. He absolutely is. Pat, what's going on? Taking the Jets. Okay.
Same here.
I think A-Rod will handle everything he has. He's seen it all. I don't see the Jets with back-to-back horrible performances we'll see though. That's true. But I'm giving uh, most of the credit to Flores and his ability with that defense. Like he has been lights out this season with that group. So I just think for Rodgers and the Jets, not the best defense for them to try to figure things out against.
To be fair, I agree with you because like I've been saying this for a while. I'm an advocate. There's some sort of storyline into this a little bit, and it would just make sense. Flores has a strong defense. Jets struggle, and they go on a run after that.
Yeah, I just watched Jordan Love and the Packers pick apart this defense in the second half of the game and outscore them 29-3. I think that Brian Flores can do a lot to try and confuse a lot of different quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And he had success against, that first matchup against Aaron Rodgers when he last played 2 years ago. But when Rodgers came back, he absolutely slaughtered him the second time. The last time I saw Rodgers face Brian Flores, Rodgers beat the brakes off of him. So I believe in Brian Flores, and I think he's a great defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure if there's a lot he can do to confuse Aaron Rodgers. I think the defense will still be good enough to keep it close. I don't think it's a blowout by any means. But I'm going to give the edge to Aaron Rodgers' experience against this Brian Flores defense.
My score is 27-20, but to basically agree on what Brett said, it's like Aaron Rodgers is too good of a quarterback. I just feel like given the loss that they had, kind of a lackluster offensive performance as well too, just kind of hungry to perform. This Jacksonville team, not Jacksonville, but this Vikings team, you're not too sure you really know about. I feel like Aaron Rodgers could take advantage of it, especially given it's kind of a Brian Flores-led scheme.
Okay. Look, we will see. This will be something that we will keep track of each week because a couple of weeks ago it seemed like half the league was unbeaten and it's slowly dwindled down.
Let's not talk about Seattle.
I mean, I wasn't gonna be specific with certain teams, but yes.
Hey, I thought Geno Smith looked good.
Yeah, he did look good, but Jared Goff threw 100% completion game, and I'm not happy about it. Can't be a defensive head coach and the other team's quarterback throw 100% and 42 points. Can't be a defensive head coach and that stuff happen. I don't care. I don't care if he had the most first downs in a loss. That's good on Ryan Grubb's part. But Mike McDonald, our head coach, no. Can't be a defensive head coach. Have 42 points scored on you.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Pat says the whole D line was out.
Sometimes
fair. We did have 4 of our starters out, but also at the same time, I don't care.
I was going to say
perfect. 18 for 18.
I'll say there's a lot of variance in luck to go 19 of 19 total in passing attempts with 4 starters out even. So it just seemed like one of those games that Seattle didn't play great, but it almost feels like they're.
I haven't been watching a lot of football. I've been alive 22 years. I'm not sure if I ever saw someone throw 100% completion rating, and he did it on my team. And I don't feel happy about it. I want to fight Jared Goff, if I'm being honest with you. Like, me and Jared Goff have some words next time we see each other because he threw 100% completion rating on my You don't know how bad it pissed me off just listening to the broadcast and being like, Jared Goff, 16 for 16. And it was like, I don't care, man. Throw an incompletion. And then when I finally thought he had one, it was a defensive penalty. It was a defensive penalty, and it was an offensive penalty. It was an offensive penalty, and it didn't count against them. So Jared Goff didn't get his incompletion. And I was like, well, that sucks because he definitely threw one. And it was their fault that the penalty happened. Give it to me. Nope. 19 for 19. Perfect night. Wins the game. I hate betting on Seattle. And it was the first time I had to bet on Seattle this season. First time I had to bet on Seattle this season. First primetime game we had this season, we lose.
Yeah.
Can't bet on primetime Seattle.
I mean, look, this has been a tough week for you. We bring up on beaten talk. It just set you off with the Seahawks game. I mean, hopefully you got it all out. You
No,
can move past this
that was
game.
it. It was a great game. I'm just upset we have the most first downs in NFL
Yeah,
history to lose a game. It's like how do I take that with stride? It's like we still lost. It's like congrats, we had the most first downs in a loss. What am I supposed to do with that?
you'll just remember it as the Jared Goff night, the night Jared Goff became public enemy number
Nah,
one to you.
it's DK Metcalf night. The year he became the first franchise receiver to have 3 straight 100-yard receptions. That's the night it's going to be as, and that's the night I'm always going to remember it as. As I'm wearing my DK Metcalf shirt, look. That's the night I remember it as. That's the night it will always be as.
Hey, that's I mean, makes sense. DK Metcalf is having a really good season.
Third in
All
reception
right,
yards. That's all I'll say.
yeah. All right, so now we got to move on to our picks. Last week, we actually pushed on the Cowboys and Giants because it did end up as a 5 point um, Cowboys win. Always love those pushes. But
That's the first time
look
the
at the rest of our
Falcons did them.
picks. Yes, first time. I mean, it because it was a line of 5 and not like 5.5 where they love to get you. It put the push in play. But Brett, you went 3, 2-1 last week. You had the best record of the week from us. Like I said, tie on the Cowboys, missed on the Bills plus 2.5, the Patriots plus 10. I commended you for picking it because I was kind of thinking that as well. But, whatever, San Francisco. But you did hit on the Titans plus 1, Lions minus 3.5, and the Bengals minus 4.5. Dylan, you had the worst week of us, 1-4-1. Tying the Cowboys, you won with the Ravens
Why I
pick.
don't bet on Seattle.
Hey, I was there with you on Seattle. The Dolphins blew it for you. The Eagles and the Browns as well. And then I went 2-3-1. I got the Commanders and the Titans right. Missed on the Steelers, Seahawks, and the Bills. So that sets us up for week 5 with Brett is technically leading 9-7-1 over 500. Dylan, you're at 10-12-1, and I am 11-11-1. So we're still pretty close to each other here.
My worst week out of the bunch.
I mean, this was kind of an odd week. Like some of these games did not go as a lot of people planned on them going. So I feel like it's not that big of a deal. But you have an opportunity to bounce back, though. Starting Thursday night, we've got the Bucks traveling to Atlanta to face the Falcons. The Falcons are coming off of the win over the Saints with the Young Wei Koo, deep field goal. The Bucks are coming off of a week where they took it to the Eagles. Have a lot of Eagles fans wondering what's going on with their team. So in this NFC South divisional matchup, how do you see this one going? The Falcons are currently a 1.5 favorite. So we will start with you, Dylan, and I gotta write these down.
Man, this is a rough game. I've been an advocate saying when the Bucks are hot, they're hot. Last week or 2 weeks ago, they lost, and I was a big advocate for the Eagles. Hence my picks. And the Bucks just ended up coming out there having a good game. I thought they were going to lose that game. I hate to do this. And I'm probably going to be wrong, and the Bucks are going to win again. The concept that I say that, give me the Falcons. Give me the Falcons at home. Just something about them. It's just like, man, it's just the Bucks are bad specific weeks. You never know when that week's going to be. You never know when Baker Mayfield's going to be bad that week, but he's going to be bad some week. And I just feel like it might be this week. They proved me wrong, beat a good team, go against a team like Atlanta, maybe have a little more confidence than maybe what I expect personally. Give me Atlanta. I don't know how they get it done. Kirk Cousins maybe just have a masterclass game. Baker Mayfield might not just have a greater game like he normally has. Maybe not might be able to find Mike Evans. Maybe not might be able to find Chris Godwin. Bucky Irvin might not be able to get going. Something might happen to where the Bucks can't just get going on offense and the Falcons win it. Might be a close game. A Young Wei Koo kick that saves them again. But whatever, the Falcons win this game.
All right. Brett, do you agree?
Ooh, this is a really tough one. I'll go with the Bucks. I'll take the Bucks to cover this one. I know they're due for some stinkers. Baker Mayfield can be inconsistent. I don't think that this week is that week. I'm going to go with Tampa on this one.
Okay. Uh, I have a feeling these two teams will split, and if I was to bet on that, I'd probably say they probably both win on their home field. Short week. I think I'll take the Falcons and the 1.5. I think I'll agree with you, Dylan. Something tells me that I actually don't think Baker will necessarily play bad. I just think that with it being in Atlanta, it might come down to once again another young Wei Koo kick. I feel like there's going to be a little bit of back and forth between these two teams. So I'll just go with the Falcons on this one. All right, Sunday night we have those Cowboys, America's team, I guess, going up against the Steelers, who are going to have to try to rebound from their first loss. They have to face the Cowboys team that they're still trying to find some answers. So in Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh, that's going to be the crowd's going to be hyped for that one. I mean, the wind will probably be crazy. I don't know. Sunday nights in Pittsburgh, well, actually, night games in general in Pittsburgh are usually an adventure in terms of the weather. It looks like it's going to be Justin Fields again. I think Russ Wilson is available to play, but I feel like they'll stick with Fields because he's led them to this point. But how do we see this one going?
Keep it short and simple. I'm taking the Cowboys. I don't know. Just feels very NFL-esque that Justin Fields finally struggles this week against a good Cowboys defense. Maybe without DeMarcus Lawrence, maybe they still might struggle a little bit. Cowboys could win this game by 10, maybe 13, 14 points. And you see Russ Wilson starting next week just because that's just how the NFL works. Even though Fields has been playing good, give me the Cowboys. 2.5, I can favor them winning by 7, 10, 13. Yeah, I got the Cowboys in this one.
All right, Brett.
This one, I'll just be pretty straightforward on this one. Give me the Steelers. I like the Steelers mainly because the Cowboys' run defense is absolutely awful. I think Najee and Justin Fields will just run all over that defense, and I don't think there'll be much that they can do to stop it.
I don't think Najee won't. Put Cordero Patterson in, then maybe it's a different story. But Najee,
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Najee Harris. There's a lot of expectations from him. I kind of agree. Like Cordero Patterson, he's had an interesting career as well. Started as kind of like a return guy, then receiving, and then ever since he was in New England and like Belichick used him as a running back a little bit, kind of seems like that's sort of just what he is. He's like the new Ty Montgomery.
but he's bigger. Tyron Montgomery is like 5'10". Cordero Patterson's like 6'4".
Yes, Cordero Patterson is a big guy. And he still has that speed, so once he gets going downhill, like he's a tough guy to bring down. I think I'm gonna go with the Steelers as well. I agree. The Cowboys' rush defense worries me, and if there's one thing Pittsburgh wants to do is run the ball, eat clock, and let that defense kind of do its thing. So I'll take the Steelers and the 2.5 in this one. All right, so we got another primetime game Monday night. No doubleheader on Monday night this week. We have the Saints traveling to Arrowhead, another tough place to play a primetime game. To face the Chiefs, who are a 5-point favorite. The Chiefs are coming off of the narrow win, the ugly win, once again, over the Chargers, but they did lose Rice to the knee injury. And the Saints are coming in off of the – what did the Saints do this past week? Oh, they lost to the Falcons on the Young Wei Koo kick. So do we see a better version of the Chiefs? Do we see another ugly win for the Chiefs? Or can the Saints and Derek Carr, who was Mo mentioned earlier, don't bet on Derek Carr, Could the Saints go in there and come up with a pretty big upset?
Man, to keep it pretty simple again, it feels like with Kansas City, where it feels like it's supposed to get uglier for them, they play better, and when it feels like it's supposed to get better for them, they play uglier. It's supposed to be an uglier game for them, so they'll probably play better. I'll take Kansas City. I said Kansas City earlier, so I'm just going to stick with it as well too.
All right, Brett.
Yeah, I'm going to take Kansas City as well. The Saints are now starting to slide. You know, they look like the greatest offense of all time for 2 weeks, but they've come back down to reality. And the worst place that you can go to try to stop a skid is go and try to beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. That just sounds like a recipe for disaster for a struggling team. Yeah, I think the Chiefs cover.
Yeah, I think I'm going to join you guys on that one and take the Chiefs minus the 5. I don't like the Saints' chances at Arrowhead. I mean, look, with Rice down, could be a sneaky Xavier Worthy game. It's going to be interesting seeing Worthy and Shaheed. Shaheed's another guy with a lot of speed. I think it's going to be fun to see those two on Monday night. But yeah,
They
I'll
should
go
have
out
them
with
cover
Chiefs
each other.
otherwise, man.
Just each a rep apiece on offense and defense. Both of them gets an offensive rep. Both of them gets a defense rep. Who can cover who?
That would be pretty interesting to see that. Okay, so for those of you who might be new to the show, we picked through the primetime games. So now, looking at the rest of the schedule, we're going to pick our favorite that we like and our underdog that we like to cover. Not necessarily going to win or lose, but just to cover the spread. We do have 4 teams on a bye this week. The Lions, Titans, Eagles, and Chargers are all on their bye. So if you're a fantasy owner, take that into consideration. Make sure you set your lineups. But Dylan, we'll start.
I have like 6 of those people on bye this week. It sucks.
I mean, look, you might have to hit the waiver wire. I don't know. Get creative.
Yeah, I already did. Tucker Craycraft, please come and clutch for me. Dallas Goddard's out.
But yeah, so what are your picks for your favorite and your underdog?
So my favorite for the week is going to be been looking. Favorites a little bit tougher. A lot of these teams on the road, but my favorite of the week. I'm not going to pick Seattle as much as I'd love to pick Seattle off of a loss, especially given where we're playing the Giants and Lumen. I'll never pick Seattle because we always lose those games somehow. Give me the 49ers against the Cardinals. Just bounce back game for them. They played good last week. Just overall, they'll just probably play better, have a better game. Kind of seems like a team that will, if they do bad, they'll slowly get back to the point where they need to be. And this might be a game where it kind of is like a little litmus test for them. We play a little bit better and be like, this is the 49ers team we expect. Play Arizona a little bit better than we expected, especially since Arizona's been playing. I'll take that. And then for my upset of the week, that's tough, but I've been saying it earlier. Give me the Jets over the Vikings. I said the Jets earlier. We kind of talked about it. I just feel like that Jets team will do it. The Vikings will lose at some point. None of these teams will be undefeated at the end of the season. Feels like a London game is the time you can kind of throw the Vikings off guard, especially maybe it might being shorter, especially given the travel and everything like that. Scheming, planning might not be super well. Give me the Jets on that one.
All right, Brett.
I feel like this has looked so easy for me, but now I feel like this is the week where I'm going to get both of these wrong. For my favorite, give me the Packers over the Rams.
Right.
I think that's a great matchup for us. Not to mention, one thing that our offense loves to do is attack using our tight ends and the run game and abusing linebackers. And make no mistake about it, Troy Reader and Christian Roseboom have been absolutely awful for the Rams. But, by the way, why can I remember the name Christian Roseboom but not Jaden Daniels? Love my ball knowledge sometimes. For my upset of the week, give me the Colts over the Jags. I think if Joe Flacco starts, that line might end up flipping a little bit, but I think that's an easy one for me.
All right. Let's see. Where do I want to go with this? I mean, the Patriots -1 seems tempting, especially after seeing what I saw from Tyler Huntley. But I mean, would it be a bad game to see Drake May get his first start? Even though I still think a couple of weeks
I
away.
said that. I said that on Sunday. This is the perfect game. No Tua. You don't have to worry about that offensive pressure. The offense is going to play great. You're going to have good offensive drives. If this is the week you're going to play Drake May, you play him. And then you got the Texans the week after that. You get them warmed up, give them that test, see where you can go from there.
I definitely like that. I like that a lot. You know what? I'll stick with the team I talked about a little earlier that I have enjoyed watching. I'll take the Commanders and the 3 against the Browns. I know Anthony, the Commanders fan, talking about their defense needs to be better. I just don't know if the Browns are the team that will expose them defensively. And I'm pretty sure Myles Garrett's kind of banged up. So
I
that's
almost picked the Browns. But I just
I mean,
thought like I would pick the Browns and then like that wouldn't be the game where, Jaden Daniels struggles.
right,
It'd be the week after that, whoever they play.
right. And if Garrett misses this game or whatever, I feel like Jaden Daniels will definitely, be thankful for that. But I just think the way that the Commanders are playing right now, especially it being in Washington, I feel like they will get that done. And 3 probably is perfect for me. I wouldn't be surprised that ends up as a 3-point game, but at least it wouldn't be a loss. So I'll take the Commanders -3. My upset. This is where it gets interesting. Do I go crazy, go Panthers again against the Bears? It looks like Andy Dalton came back to earth last week. Texans over the Bills. Texans. If I'm more confident in how the Texans have been playing, that would be an easy one at +1. I can't do Giants against the Seahawks. I can't do that one. How crazy don't Bengals, Ravens? You know what? I'm gonna go crazy with this one. I will take the Bengals in the 2.5. I think the Bengals offense has arrived. I think that Joe Burrow and Chase and Higgins will be able to do to the Ravens defense what Josh Allen and the Bills offense couldn't do. My worry though is the Bengals defense against the Ravens offense, but maybe it turns into a bit of a shootout. I'll take Joe Burrow and the Bengals plus the 2.5. And
I
I'll
wasn't
probably
going
be
to
here
touch
next
that
week
game
with
with a
the
10-foot
Ravens
pole.
crazy win. So
Yeah, I wasn't going to touch that game with a 10-foot pole, man. That
I,
game is so, like, I don't know. Just the Ravens giving their win last week and the Bengals kind of getting back on stride. That's the game I kind of just, I don't know because
Mhm.
whatever result happens, I don't know what the aftermath of that's going to be. So I'm not even going to avoid talking, like, even messing with it. Someone's going to win that game. That's all I know that's going to happen.
I mean, hey, that's not technically true. It could be a tie.
True.
Fair enough. But I feel like we should be at the point where NFL should get rid of ties. But that's my opinion. I feel like if you tie in a season, if I pay money for a ticket and a team ties, I'm pissed. I'm pissed off. I'd rather go home with a loss than a tie.
Right.
What am I getting out of a tie? Like, at least with a loss, it's like, this is what we need to do better at tie. It's like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, we did okay. We did enough to be
Right.
equal.
It'll be interesting to see the Bengals because did their offense really wake up, or is that just because they're facing the Panthers? And with the way the Panthers have looked, I think that's a very valid question.
No, it is. But I mean, look, Jamar Chase has said it. He's over the BS of the offseason. He's just having fun again. And as most people said, well, you created the BS with your contract, so and you didn't sign a new one, so I don't know. I don't understand how the BS is over with. But he says he's in a good place. T. Higgins, I think his first week back didn't look that good, but Higgins looked better this past week. So I feel like for the Ravens secondary, which I mean I haven't checked the rankings yet, but going into the Buffalo game, they were the worst pass defense in the league. If Burrow's on with Chase and Higgins, they could have, and the other guy, what's his, I pronounced it correctly once, but the EU
Andre
Shiva,
Ioslovis.
that guy, he's
Yeah.
been a really good complimentary wide receiver when Higgins is out. Like he was the guy who was getting open when Chase was there. Now with Higgins back, that's not a bad third option. So I think the Bengals will be able to put up points against the Ravens. It'll just be whether or not their defense, knowing that they're going to have to stop the run in that game, not only from Derrick Henry, but Lamar and his keepers and all that stuff. I'm hoping that they can key in on that and slow that down a bit. I think they can get it done. So the Bengals plus the 2.5. So just to remind you all, Thursday night, Dylan and I are taking the Falcons minus 1.5. Brett's taking the Bucks plus 1.5, which is kind of odd because usually Dylan and I are the ones who are all over the Bucks. Not this week. Sunday night, Dylan is the lone one taking the Cowboys plus 2.5. Brett and I are taking the Steelers minus 2.5. Monday night, we all have the Chiefs minus the 5. Uh, Dylan's favorite, 49ers minus the 7.5. Upset, well, underdog, I should say. Jets plus 2.5. Brett's got the Packers minus 3.5 as his favorite. Colts plus 3, your underdog. I got the Commanders minus 3 as my favorite, and the Bengals plus 2.5 as my underdog. Once again, I normally probably wouldn't touch that game, but this year I've kind of been going crazy with my underdog pick, and they worked out. So I'm hoping that this is another week where it does. If not, I don't know.
Hey, that's the only way to go. That's
True.
I got lucky that one week, and the Giants happened to beat the Browns, so anything's possible, right?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the point with this
Yeah.
NFL season. You just have to like pick 2 or 3 games where you just feel it in your gut. It's going to upset, and if you feel that, it's actually going to happen. Like that upset will happen. Like
Yeah.
randomly this week, like like the Panthers could beat the Bears, and like that's just kind of where we're at.
Yeah, that's very true, and it's been an odd season like that. So I feel like if any season you're going to try to go big and go crazy with picks, this is the year to do it. All right,
Most
so that's
unpredictability for sure.
yes, absolutely. So that's everything. So yeah, if you guys like the page, Integrity Sports Network, here in a little bit, I'll put our picks up on the Facebook page, and you guys can you know look at it and comment or whatever underneath it about our picks. Tell us which one of us is crazy or what. If you agree with us, we'd love to hear that as well. But yeah, so with that kind of being all the topics that we had, anything you guys want to add before we get out of here, or
No,
No, shout out to I guess just one shout out. Shout out to Ryan Williams, 17-year-old for Alabama, that receiver. Clutch
oh,
game,
he was great.
clutch touchdown. Like not an Alabama fan, I'm not a Georgia fan, just being 17-year-old in a college football big game, SEC spotlight, and just having a
Yeah,
spotlight moment like that. Like you just got tip my hats off to him. That's so impressive. So impressive. Imagine being 17-year-old in that situation right there. And making the play that he did too. It looks so beautiful. The catch when he first spun and the spin afterwards. It was beautiful.
yeah, yeah. That game lived up to the hype.
I'll say, yeah,
Right.
just thank you everybody for tuning in. Normally it's on Thursday, but you can catch me on the N1 podcast tonight. I had to move it up to Tuesday. My cousin's getting married on Sunday, so I have to work on Thursday. So that'll be great. But yeah, other than that, yeah, catch me on the N1 podcast.
All right, nice. I'll just say that I know we didn't cover these, but the WNBA playoffs have been great so far. We're in the semifinals. The 4 best teams are playing. I'm definitely excited. Hopefully, my son can beat the Lynx. I know it's going to be tough. Nafisa Collier is one of my favorites from this season for sure. And the MLB playoffs got underway. And after the
Mm-hmm.
madness that they had yesterday with the Braves and the Mets playing a doubleheader for games 161 and 162 to decide the final, well, I guess decide the final 2 wildcard spots in the National League.
They
Great
both
drama.
got it.
and they both get in. The Diamondbacks, I'm sure, are punching a wall somewhere, but that's the unfortunate part of it. And today and tomorrow, you're getting quadruple headers. Like,
I mean, I'm
shout out to
not
you,
sure who
baseball.
all won today, but I know for a fact the Royals won today, the Mets won
Hmm.
today. So if you're fans of both those teams, they won.
Yeah.
Being around the Kansas area my whole life, a bunch of people I know are big Royals fans. So it's good seeing them back in from a season where I'm a Blue Jays fan personally, but it's good
Hmm.
seeing them back in from kind of being that team that was kind of that laughing stock after winning a World Series. It felt like, and then kind of just shocking everybody and being this playoff team. It's good to see. I always have love for that Royals fan. That World Series they won when they beat the Giants, I went to that parade.
Hmm.
So it's just nice to see. It's just nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Royals won 1-0 over the Orioles. The Mets won 8-4 over the Brewers. The Tigers, who had a
Yep, Tigers won
crazy
as well.
run down the stretch to get into the playoffs, won today 3-1 over the Astros. And currently the Braves and um, Padres are scoreless in the bottom of the first. So
Why
if
couldn't
you're a
they do that
baseball
when
fan,
Cabrera was back, though? Why can't you do that when Cabrera was there? Why couldn't you make that run when he was there?
yeah,
You have to do it the year after his retirement season? Messed up. Where we were watching every season for him making all these highlights. ESPN was tuning in, seeing
yep.
if he was going to hit it. Why couldn't it have been this season?
Hey, sports are weird like that. Although it is refreshing, I guess, to see Detroit, Kansas City in there. Two teams that if your team is out of it, I feel like those are two cities you can root for
Yeah,
and kind of
me
hope they
being a
do
Blue
well.
Jays fan, seeing like just being from that Kansas area and watching them like be
Hmm.
going to parades and stuff when they won that, when they did beat the Giants. Can't remember what year, 20 whatever.
Yeah,
But that's like one of those teams I like seeing doing good. And then Detroit, just because like I just feel like people just have love for Detroit because they can't win anything.
yeah, and with the Lions, with their resurgence, now the Tigers doing what they're doing. Maybe this is the year the Pistons finally put it together. I doubt that, but it seems like Detroit is like riding this wave right now. So why not? Um,
And I think the Pistons will be twice as good as they were last year. Granted, that is 28 wins instead of 14, but that would be a step in the right direction
that
for
would be
Detroit.
a big step in the right direction. So yeah, I'm sure Pistons fans would take that any day. But like I mean, we said earlier, like we'll start working in NBA a lot more as we are into October, and I feel like once we get to October, my mind starts really focusing on the NBA season. So we'll have some more of that next week. We'll obviously have NFL next week. If Devontae Adams gets moved, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the undefeateds and the lone winless team. If Jaguars get their first win or whatever, we'll have picks next week. We'll have all that good stuff. So if you did like this episode, make sure you like the video, follow, subscribe, share it out, watch it again after. You know, really help us out. But yeah, follow Integrity Sports Network here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Greatly appreciate it. Brett mentioned and one podcast tonight, so make sure you check that out after the fact. And yeah, I mean that's it for us. So make sure you come back next Tuesday for another edition of the On the Ball podcast. For myself, Dylan, and Guardy3. Enjoy the rest of your night. Go check out WNBA and MLB playoffs, and we'll see you next week.